All right. Well, let's get started here today. So good afternoon, everybody. Today, my name is Ben Townsend with Tracker Products. Today is number 21 of our episodes of our Wednesday webinar. And today I have with me the Hillview Police Department. And so let me introduce both my guests here. The first one on the left side, at least on my view here, is Lieutenant Charles McWhirter. Welcome, appreciate you being here today. And to his left, our right, is going to be Detective Scott Barrow. Did I say Barrow? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Excellent. Well, good. Guys, I really appreciate you being here with me today. Anytime we do a virtual evidence tour, people, I'm telling you, we get more people show up to these than anything else because ultimately people want to see what are other people doing. Now, most people don't want to do what you're doing, which is come on and talk about what they're doing and sort of potentially expose themselves to who knows what sort of feedback and comments. And from what I've seen of your setup and operation, my guess is we're not going to get a lot of negative feedback. You got a very clean evidence room. But today I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, where you've come from, how did you get to where you're at? And as I mentioned in our Facebook community group, and for everybody that's on here on my screen right now, our Facebook community group, we have over 500 property and evidence managers that are now in our Facebook community group. And the amount of information, the questions, and Scott, I don't even know if you know that thing exists or not, but we got people.
No, I didn't, but I'll be certainly searching for it as soon as we get off here.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so, we're talking with you specifically today, but the community group allows people direct contact to each other. So when they get in, there'll be some things I'm sure that will come out of this today where somebody will get on there and be like, hey, how do you do that? And people from all across the country will respond to whatever it may be. So yeah, I'll definitely make sure you get in that because I want to link your names in there. Because if anybody has questions they want to ask directly of these gentlemen, we'll have them in the community group, and then they can respond via that if they so choose to do so. But let's dig right into what we're going to do today. So again, we're going to do a virtual evidence tour of the Hillview Police Department. I want to walk through some basic stuff. Tell me, so I know, Lieutenant, we'll start with you. You stepped into the evidence room, back in, did you take over immediately when you came in 2012? How did you get into the evidence room?
Well, when I came here from Tennessee, I went to the patrol division. And after in patrol division for a couple of years, I was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. At that time, we only had one lieutenant, and one of the roles and responsibilities, the detective, one of the roles and responsibilities of the detective was the evidence room. Yeah. When I took over the evidence room, we were still using logbooks and evidence cards. Mm-hmm. And there was about 16 years worth of evidence in the property room. Of a lot of those cases had been adjudicated. So the evidence had went in, the court cases went through the justice system, but the evidence was never destroyed. So that's where it all got started, as I knew that we had to get some type of organization in there and start purging that property room of any old evidence.
So you didn't, so I don't think I really even asked you for it, but did you ever think to take of a before picture, or do you just have it in your mind as to what this thing looked like when you rolled in back in 2012?
No, I didn't take a picture, and I really wish that I would have. That way we could show, like today and anybody else, the progress that we've made since 2016. But to give your viewers kind of a visual picture of what it was like is when you push the door open to enter the evidence room, you were literally pushing evidence that was piled up on the floor out of the way. And you literally had to step over things to get from the front of the property room to the back of the property.
So it wasn't a very pretty picture when you walked in the door.
Not at all.
I'm just curious, and I always ask people this: what was the thought in your mind? I mean, first of all, my assumption is you were already in charge of the property room before you ever stepped into it, or did you get a chance to look at it first?
I had a chance to look at it first, and my initial thought was I definitely have my work cut out for me. So we did an inventory before the property room changed hands from the outgoing to the incoming. And I just knew immediately that I had a lot of work ahead of me. I'd never managed a property room. I got a kind of a crash course as far as how it worked. So a lot of it was just research, visiting other departments, seeing what everybody else was doing, looking at policies and procedures from other agencies. And 2016 was also the year that our agency went toward accreditation. So there was a lot of things from the accreditation standards that we had to put into place. So a lot of that helped as a guideline for me to kind of get through to the end result.
All right. Well, so the way we'll do this today, and either one of you can talk about, maybe let's bounce back and forth with the pictures on the screen, and that way you can each explain a little bit of what's going on. Let's start out and let's just show what it looks like today, and then we're going to wrap things up where we really dig into some of the packaging stuff that you've put into play. And we've got a really big crowd here today, and I think it's because I put on the Facebook community group we were going to talk about the vacuum sealing process and some of the things that you guys are doing. People are very interested in that. So let's just get a bit of an overview. And so I'm showing some stuff on your screen. Why don't you just, my assumption is this is the way it looked like when you rolled in, but what are we seeing here? Either one of you can just sort of dig into what we got.
Go ahead, Scott.
So this is this isn't the evidence room itself. This is actually the evidence processing room. All evidence will get processed in this room. It has 2 cameras inside this room, one in opposite corners. So it has a camera as soon as the person walks into the evidence processing room, and then it has another one that looks directly down over top of a non-porous table. And the process when they walk in is the first thing they're going to do is they're going to clean off the table. They're going to use surface cleaner, sanitation wipes, whatever, and just make sure that there was no contamination left behind on that table. They'll use gloves in the event that they need to, or they feel comfortable. They'll use goggles and a mask, but then they will process all of their evidence right here on this table. It's under 2 cameras the entire time that they're processing it. And with drugs, and I know that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more today, every single drug that comes in is double bagged. So it doesn't matter if you took it off of the suspect and it was already in a baggie, it's going to go into another baggie before it goes into an evidence bag. And you can see it's just a standard, Walmart brand baggie, sandwich bags, nothing special. But we will put it in that baggie before we put it into an evidence bag. And the reason for that is just to try to cut down on any type of contamination with, the fentanyl and carfentanil. We're seeing a lot more of that in our region, and we just don't want to take the chance on, at least try to reduce the chance on somebody getting exposed to that.
Sure. Now, one of the things that stands out to me, cleanliness. Like I'm seeing, so let me flip back a couple of screens here. It seems to me that the idea of cleanliness and cross-contamination has been beat into everybody. Like not only beat it, I'm assuming you talk about it frequently, but there are signs everywhere. Keep this area clean. Do you have pushback on that? Does everybody comply with that? Is that, I would assume everybody just rolls along with it, but how did you get to that point?
Well, part of the accreditation process we went through, the signage is required. So obviously it's required for a reason. And one of the things that we did is, you educate the officers through training why it's important to keep that area clean. Sure. Because cross-contamination, that's what defense attorneys are going to attack when it comes to your evidence, is how your evidence is processed, how it's handled, and things of that nature. So I like to tell the officers, when you're building a case that's going to go before a judge and potentially a jury, you actually get to load the gun the defense attorney is going to fire at you when you're on the stand. So if you can eliminate and take as many bullets out of that gun as possible, make sure that your case is airtight, especially with evidence processing, then you're definitely going to walk into the courtroom with the ball more in your court and in your favor.
All right. Hey, somebody actually has already asked a question. What accreditation process did you go through?
We are with KACP, which is the Kentucky Association of Chiefs of Police. Right. It is Chiefs of Police. It's an organization here in Kentucky, and basically they have taken Kentucky standards and they've elevated those. So we're not only doing what the state of Kentucky requires, but we're far exceeding that with the accreditation process. And they also come in, it's every 5 years that you get reaccredited, and they come in within those 5 years and they basically spot check everything to make sure that you're in compliance and you're doing everything that you're supposed to.
Sure, absolutely. Well, let's roll through some more pictures here, and you guys can explain what's going on here. I mean, so this is just some more pictures of the processing room. You know what? Let me go back to the cameras for just a moment, because we don't see a lot of cameras in use as I do these tours. I'm just curious. So you have multiple cameras. How long do you keep the video for all of this stuff? You know?
Well, now the computer screen that you're looking at right there, that is actually the hard drive system that goes to our interview and interrogation room.
Yeah.
So we can come in there, come to that computer screen right there. We can click record, and when we're doing an interview or interrogation, we can record that. We usually take that video off right away. As far as the other cameras, the one that you see in the top of the screen that's showing, and then opposite corner that points down at the table, yeah, I believe that those actually those get saved for about 45 days. They're on a loop.
Okay.
So if there was ever a discrepancy, which,
Sure.
45 days is more than enough time for us to get it into a temp locker, get it checked into the evidence room. So if there's ever a discrepancy, then that's more than enough time for us to find that.
Is that, I'm just curious, is that having a camera, have you ever had to go back and look at something to whether it's helped or hurt? Have you ever had to go back and look at it?
Not to my knowledge, no. And it's not that we don't trust the officers. The cameras are there to basically make sure everything is being done the right way. If there is a discrepancy, whether there's a miscount in money, not just drugs, there's a miscount.
Right.
Our policy, one of the things that we require is any money has to be done with a minimum of 2 people, just to ensure the accuracy.
Sure.
So they're just there as a safeguard, in case there is something that we need to go back and look at to try to figure out, what happened or how a count got wrong, or what happened with something. Somebody may have dropped something on the floor, a pill or something, and not really seen where it went. So we could go back and actually look at that and maybe use the cameras as an aid.
Yeah. Hey, my opinion on cameras is always, it is there to help. It's not there to hurt. And if it is there, if somebody does get hurt, it should be anyways. But there is a reality that when there's a camera running, things are done differently. People react differently to having a camera recording. And I'm all for having, video cameras. I'm curious if there's anybody watching this webinar today, if you wouldn't mind posting it in the window. Does anybody have cameras in the actual evidence room? I'm curious. I mean, certainly I see them. If I see them, they're in processing areas. I don't generally see them in the actual evidence room. So that's not the purpose of our talk here today, but I'm just interested if anybody actually has cameras in the evidence room. And yes, I'm actually getting several responses from people that cameras are in the evidence room. So, well, good. I didn't mean to dovetail into that. I was just interested in how that worked for you. So, all right, well, there's another shot of the camera. So a big part of our discussion today is fentanyl. I mean, there is no doubt that this drug that has popped up in the last couple of years, it's a whole different animal altogether. And we've actually had people talking about fentanyl. How big of a deal is this in your area? I mean, you were explaining to me a little bit earlier that heroin has been a big problem. I mean, how much fentanyl is running across your desk?
There's actually quite a bit. The labels that are here in front of you were actually a reaction to what we were getting back from state police. When we take our drugs to the state police lab, when we were getting them back, and there'll be another picture later on, they were affixing a label on those packages that were saying, hey, there was fentanyl inside this drug. Handle it with care, be cautious, and things of that nature. So we wanted to try to give them a chance to give them a heads up. So if we talk to a suspect and a suspect overdosed or whatever the case was, and we suspect that there could be fentanyl inside of that drug that we're taking in, then the officer will go ahead and affix our own label to that drug prior to going to the state police, so that they kind of have a little bit of a heads up. Not that they're not already being cautious, but we want to just kind of give them a little bit of a heads up. Hey, this officer or this suspect, that they suspect that there's already fentanyl in here, so we're going to handle it with just a little bit more care.
Absolutely. By the way, I had over a dozen people respond to that comment about the cameras in the evidence room, and they were all saying they have cameras everywhere. So that's becoming more and more a thing. And so, okay, so I got some responses on that. Now, I'll bet you $1, somebody's going to ask about this. that you printed those labels. My assumption is you went out and bought a thing of Avery labels, or did somebody give those to you?
Now that's exactly what they are. They're just Avery labels. We got on Microsoft Word and just threw something together real quick.
I guarantee you somebody wants that word template. And so if you would not mind sending me that word template, I'll toss that in our community group. We'll put the Avery label number in there. And would you be willing to share that with everybody?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got it saved on my desktop.
Okay, good. Well, we'll get that from you because I like that. I mean, that's in fact, we got some more packages coming up here in a minute where, I mean, listen, when you're dealing with fentanyl, you want that stuff everywhere. I mean, you want to make sure people know what they're potentially dealing with. So, yes, multiple people are chiming in. They would like the template. I knew I would get that. There's no, again, this is the purpose of all this. Somebody sees something else and they're like, I want that template. So yes, I'll put the template up on the community group when we're all done. If Joe or somebody in my office is watching, write that down and remind me of that later. So, all right, good. We'll get to that one. So, and you mentioned a little bit ago. Now, you know what? Maybe let me back up because one thing I didn't say. How many officers do you guys have? Tell me a little bit about your department and maybe what's your square mileage that you deal with or number of citizens. Just give me some statistics about Hillview.
We're located here in Bullitt County, which is the first county south on I-65 as you come out of Louisville. Our jurisdiction actually borders Jefferson County, which is Louisville Metro. Our agency, we actually have a Louisville mailing address. Our community here is just under 10,000 citizens, and we have a department size of about 20 full-time officers.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we stay pretty busy. We get a lot of overflow from Louisville Metro. You really would. I tell people you wouldn't know that you left Louisville unless you read the sign that says "Welcome to Hillview."
Got it. Yeah. And one thing I do want to point out to people, because a lot of times people will hear a 20-man police department. One thing I iterate time and again, the only difference between Hillview and the Omaha Police Department, which is a client of ours, it's the same stuff, just a much larger amount of it, you know. And so, you know, when I show off their evidence room in a minute and it looks spectacular, you know, there's no reason a really large police department cannot be like that. It just, and so one thing that they pointed out earlier when we were talking, you know, the difference is in a 20-man police department, there's not a full-time evidence custodian. That is one of their jobs of what could be many jobs. And so, so we'll get into some of the statistics here about your evidence in a little bit, but, you know, 20-man police department, 100-man, you got to find a way to get these things done. There is no such thing as an excuse to throw evidence off to the wayside because we don't have time to deal with it. It's got to get done like anything else. So the thing I wanted to point out here, you've got a lot of homemade stuff. You go out and buy your own Avery labels and print them. You get Walmart baggies, and I mean, you make use of what you got, right?
Yeah, and this is nothing special. If somebody wants to do the double bag process, it just adds an extra barrier is all it is. Yeah. Just take whatever your evidence is, throw it into a Ziploc bag, and then put it into an evidence bag, and it just creates that double layer.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. Somebody asked me about Narcan. We'll come back to that when we dig into the fentanyl a little bit, fentanyl here a little bit. So, and so all of your officers do all their processing right there in the evidence room, right? They come in, they bag everything, they deal with it all right there.
That's correct. You know, and to kind of hit on the bag that you showed in the previous slide, we require our officers. That's mainly for drug evidence. Now, obviously, if we have a hammer that was used in some type of a crime, we're not going to double bag it and try to squeeze in a little sandwich bag. But this is mainly just for drugs because of the fentanyl deal. Sure. But yeah, you're correct. You know, we set this room up when we went through our accreditation process that we wanted the officers to be able to enter this room with their evidence, to go in, decontaminate the non-porous table, bag the evidence properly, tape it up, seal it, sign it, everything they needed to do to actually put the evidence in the bag. And then once they clean everything up, is to sit down at a workstation and go ahead and enter that data into the tracker system. And then from there, they can walk right down the hall and place that evidence into a template.
Yeah. So one other thing just to throw out so everybody has a bit of an idea, when we were on the phone earlier, we went over some statistics. Right now, the Hillview Police Department has 781 pieces of evidence checked into their evidence room. The good part to me is they've disposed over 1,000 pieces of evidence. And this is just in the last couple of years, because as you shared with me earlier, when you went into our software, you weren't coming out of a system. There was no import process. And so I asked you the question, how did all that old evidence get in there? So explain to me, I mean, it had to get done. How did you go about getting all your old evidence into a system?
Yeah, once we decided that we were going to go with Tracker, and I built the system and we went live. From there forward, any and all evidence that our agency took in would be entered into Tracker. The old evidence that was already in there, we were using the log books and the evidence cards. So like I explained earlier, had to go through, we had to get organization, I had to go through and check to see if these cases were adjudicated, and then get rid of that evidence. Once we went through that process, which was very lengthy, it was very time consuming. Once we had a bulk of evidence that we're like, okay, we have to maintain this evidence, whether it was from a murder case that we're required to keep for X amount of number of years, we took that information that was on the cards and the logbook, and then we transferred that data over into Tracker. We also we scanned the actual evidence cards and the logbooks and uploaded those as digital media into the Tracker system. Now we maintain the cards and the logbooks, but we've actually put those in a box. They've been taped up, sealed, initialed. That way they can't be tampered with. So everything as of today, even old evidence and the new evidence that we currently have, everything is in Tracker.
Now you're not going to bust out the old logbooks anytime soon and revert back to them, are you? Or they say
no. We love it. You know, obviously the evidence custodians, the officers love it. You know, they can look at everything, even in court, and a prosecutor say, hey, what is the status on this case? They can log in, as you know, and say, well, this evidence was taken to the lab on this day. Sure. So the officers love it. We love the software here. We're very pleased with it.
Very good. So we're looking at temporary lockers here. My assumption is, so when they bring stuff in, they're going to throw something in a locker and lock that thing up. Is there anything special I don't see about that process?
No, that part is self-explanatory. They just throw it into a temp locker and lock it. Everything stays. We've welded 4 of those doors closest to you. In the event that somebody needs to put a long gun or something like that, you know, there's an area for them to have a larger area.
Hey, you got to make do with whatever you got, right? You can't just go out and buy new lockers. Who did one of you did the welding process? I'm curious.
Yeah, we had Public Works do that. You know, that's bolted to the concrete wall there, that block wall. So those lockers aren't going anywhere.
Okay. And listen, I don't think anybody's ever had Public Works that I know of come in and weld some lockers together. But again, you got to do what you got to do. So I'm all for that. So, all right, let's move into the actual evidence room. So it's not, you know, it's not a massive evidence room, but what I do like seeing is uniformity. You got anything you want to explain to us about this evidence room?
Well, Lieutenant McWhorter built it. I just maintain it. So I'm going to kind of let him take the lead on this one for right now.
Yeah.
As you remember earlier, I told you when I first took over, when you opened the door, it was stuff from the front to the back. So now you kind of hopefully have a visual. Just imagine things piled up about 3 feet high, all over the floor, and shelves overflowing. So what we did as part of the accreditation process is we had to separate drugs, money, guns, and high value items. So that is what is behind the cage there, because everything has to be, in those categories have to be behind 2 locks. Mm-hmm. And the lock on the door does not count as lock number 1. So that fence there, we put that fence up inside, and that is the lock number 1. And then there are safes that are behind that gate that acts as lock number 2. The other thing that we had to do is, you know, I wanted to be able to get pins to put them on the shelves to kind of separate things. Before it was just wire baskets and things that were thrown up there. I wanted the clear see-through bins. That way you can somewhat see what's in there and how full that bin is. Just get some organization, you know, and basically setting it up from year to year. You know, each bin, you may have 2 bins that are evidence from 2014, and then the bin next to that may be 2015. So we've kind of separated it up there to try to get some type of organization.
Sure. Yeah. And I would say probably the most critical factor is just starting a disposition process. So you guys went from doing no disposition to explain real quickly your disposition process and how you go about, you know, getting things out of the room.
The way our agency feels is, you know, it's kind of like you caught it, you clean it. So the officer makes an arrest, they log in evidence. They're going to have to go to court, whether it's a preliminary hearing, trials, and whatnot. They're the ones, that is their case, that is their evidence. The evidence custodians are there just to be custodians of the evidence, take them to the lab, whatnot. It's not the evidence custodian's responsibility to follow each and every case through the court system. So every 6 months, the custodians will send out a report to each and every officer here and says, hey, this is all the active evidence that you have currently logged in. Sure. You need to check the statuses of these cases, and if the case has been adjudicated, then you need to write a destruction order or a forfeiture order, whatever's applicable for that case and that piece of evidence. And then when they do that, they submit it to the evidence custodians. The custodians then will take those down to the prosecutor's office, and then they look at those, sign off on them, and the judge signs them. And once the clerk files those, they get a copy back, and then that evidence can be destroyed.
Yeah, just to be clear, you just made a lot of friends out there, because you would not believe how many agencies have the opinion that the custodian is not only responsible for custodying the evidence, but they are also responsible for what's going on with it and checking in with the courts and everything else. It's absolute insanity. And so while I like to see a more automated version of what you just described, the fact that you go back to the officer, you claim it, you take it, man. It's your stuff. You've got to answer for it. Somebody's probably going to take this recording and go back to a boss and say, hey, look at this guy, he's saying it right there. So you may get a call from somebody like, did you really say? Yes, that is the answer. The custodian should not be responsible for disposition. I will never believe that. You've got to get the officers involved. And in your case, imagine if you just went to Scott and said, hey, you're in charge of getting rid of all this stuff now. You know what it's just going to pile up. And that's exactly where you were at. And so that's why I like that whole scenario right there. Is I want it to be automated, but if you go back to the officer with the document, I'm good with that too. They've got to answer for it, because they're the most knowledgeable ones. So, all right, let me get off my high horse on that one. But somebody is asking a question. Did you write up a policy? Is there something written on that concept right there, or did you just literally make the edict and say it out loud and that's it?
Yeah, one of the things I got spoken about the accreditation process. We took our old policy manual and threw it out the window. It's very old, very outdated. Yeah. So yes, it is written within the evidence collection policy that we have, that the evidence custodians will give that report every 6 months to the officers. And they have, a reasonable amount of time, and we're not expecting them to get it done in a week, but a reasonable amount of time to get that stuff back and check on it. And even if the case is still tied up in court, they have to notate to the side of that case, hey, this case is still active in the court system, but they at least need to check on every case and provide an update to the custodians. And you had said it earlier, we're a 20-man department. Officers within our department wear multiple hats. Detective Barrow here, Scott, he's a taser instructor, he's a driving instructor, and he's a detective. He's actually actively working cases, and he has the property room. He's one of 2 custodians. So to add that on top of, hey, all of these responsibilities, me as your supervisor is telling you now, you need to check each of these cases in CourtNet to see if that's just it's not feasible. So the officers, it's their responsibility, and that's why we put that back.
Excellent. Yeah, good to review that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. So I'm just going to quickly run through these. I want to dig into your packaging and the vacuum sealing. I think that's what a lot of people are here for. Is there any? I see things clearly marked biohazard. I'm always a big fan of clearly things that stand out, letting people know, hey, listen, this is something to be dealt with carefully. Anything you want to throw out about this particularly?
Not really. We do have several bins that are still empty. So if we have to, add to the biohazard bins, part of the standard is biohazard has to be on the bottom shelf. So we've got our buckle standards, our sexual assault kits, things of that nature inside these bins. If we need more space, then we'll just, continue to work to the right and add more spaces. But that just clearly shows that, hey, these are biohazard bins. If you're going to get in here, you might want to throw some gloves on. There's some biohazardous material in here.
Sure. By the way, for Tiffany that posted a question about the policy manual, I'll see if I can hit Scott up for a copy of their policy manual if he'll share that out. I'm sure it's public anyway, so if you don't mind me putting it in the community group, somebody can dig into it and grab that section out of it. So, yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
Excellent. We'll put that up there. I'll have a whole bunch of stuff I'll get from you at the end, and we'll post all that up. So, all right, well, let's roll through some more here. Again, I love clean and organization. I like the open, the clear boxes so that you can see the contents of what's inside of it. Always a big fan of that. I see the logbook sitting on the shelf right there, which is always important. Anything you want to throw out on this?
Not really. You know, me and the other detective, the two custodians, you know, we work really well together, and we know where things go. We have bins for just electronics, bins for just cell phones, counterfeit money, drug paraphernalia. We do all of our own test firing for any crime gun that comes in. We submit those casings to NABIN to be entered. So when we get those casings back, we've got a bin just for those. So
Yep.
everything has its own place.
Sure.
If you ask me, not only will Tracker give me the shelf bin, the location, but if I know that I'm looking for paraphernalia, I already know which bin or bins it's going to be in.
And by the way, the only way you can pull off having dedicated bins like that is if your disposition process is going well and you have room to do those types of things. And there's a lot of people that there is no disposition taking place. And so the idea of having just a cell phone bin does not exist because they're just cramming things into any available spot. And so
Right.
that's another thing to say, get on top of that disposition process and you will start to recognize some of these things. I even see open bins. I mean, are those empty bins on the shelf?
Yeah, we do have we have several empty bins. I would say that conservatively, I'd say we're probably at about 40 to 50% capacity inside of our evidence room. So we do have space to put a lot more things.
Okay. Well, keep on top of it. You don't want to fill it up. So, all right, I see a nice big safe back here. Let me just scroll to the next one because I actually like the insides of this. So, what is that? Was that built that way, or what? How did you get the gun holsters on the side of that safe? How are those affixed to that?
Well, this is actually key number two that Lieutenant McWhorter explained.
Yeah.
You know, guns, money, high values, it has to be behind two keys.
Yeah.
And the entry door doesn't count. So the first key was actually the gate.
Yeah.
The second key is actually the safe. And no, we actually went to Tractor Supply Company. We said, hey, we're looking for a safe. We need a safe that's going to be this big. What can you do for us? Oh, well, here, this one's got a small scratch. We'll give you 30% off. We'll take it. So that's kind of how, when you're a small agency, you kind of have to acquire things of that nature.
Sure.
But no, this one actually, we don't use those holster pockets on the side. All of our guns, with the exception of the long guns that are sitting on the side of the safe, because that came from a very large case. It was about 70 guns that come from that case. But all of our cases, or all of our guns, get boxed up. Again, that was an old case, those ones that are sitting there. But money's double counted. All guns that get put in, it has to be double checked by two officers and notated in Tracker that if the gun is empty, it gets boxed up. So everything that's in here, the pocket that's on the door, top right, that's money. Those two pockets, all of that is money. So that money's been double counted and it goes inside the safe, high values, and guns.
Excellent. Somebody asked about the safe manufacturer. It looks like it's a Canon safe. So never heard of that, but I'm sure there's dozens of them out there.
One of the things,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you'll go back to that picture with the safe, see that little gray box on the wall? That gray box on the wall there, that contains the keys to those safes. And the way we set up our evidence room, there's only two people at this department that have keys to that evidence room and that key box. And that's both of our evidence custodians. The chief, myself, anybody else here does not have access to that. And we did that for a reason. And even with money, I know a lot of agencies, money is a big deal. Once we get adjudicated case and we get money that is basically forfeited to our agency, one of the evidence custodians will check out that money. Myself or the chief will sign for it, and then myself and the chief go to the bank and we deposit that at the bank, but we do not even compromise the bag until we're there in the bank under cameras and whatnot, and then they have to count it, obviously, to make sure that there's an accurate count there. And once we get the deposit slip, we come back, scan that, and it goes into that case as well to show we checked out, say, $100, and then we deposited $100. So it's just another level of security and accountability to keep everybody honest.
Excellent, excellent. All right, let's dig into, one of the primary focuses of the call here today is not everybody is doing vacuum sealing with evidence, and so I'm sure a lot is going to come out of this. I even have my own questions about vacuum sealing, like things that I don't understand or maybe even concerns that I would have. And so let's just, what we're looking at here right now are these all drugs here? What type of evidence? Maybe let me ask that question. What type of evidence would you vacuum and what would you not vacuum seal?
So as of right now, we vacuum all drugs. So what you're looking at here, and the picture may make it look a little bit confusing, but that's actually organized. So you've got 5 rows there, from left to right: 2016, 17, 18, 19, and we're currently on 20, which is the far right side. And everything is in order by case number. So the case numbers are in numerical order by the way the officer puts it in. So if you give me a case number, I know exactly where it's going to be at, and it's going to be in numerical order. That's the way we've done it. With all of our drugs, this is our drug cabinet. Some of the lower cabinets, we've got larger packages of drugs. This is all of the smaller packages. Your small bags of marijuana, cocaine, whatever, heroin. All of that goes into these cabinets. And again, it all gets vacuum sealed. Now, the process for that is it doesn't get vacuum sealed before we take it to the state police lab, because they're just going to break that seal. But it is double bagged because of the way the officer processed the evidence. So if it goes to the lab, then we'll take it straight to the lab. But then as soon as it comes back, we're going to run it through just a generic food processor or a food type.
I think I got that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there it is. It's nothing special. I think we spent $25-$30 on it up at Walmart. The big roll there we got on Amazon. We got us a couple large rolls. That way we could make our own size bags. We could make them to the size that we needed. There's a picture. There's 8 plants inside that big, large brown bag, and we rolled it. We put it inside of a long sleeve, and we vacuum sealed it. And you have absolutely no smell of anything inside this process or inside this evidence room. You don't smell marijuana when you walk into the office. You don't smell marijuana when you walk into the evidence processing room. And it's not the ventilation system that's taking that smell out. It's the fact that we're using these vacuum seals, and it keeps the smell down. It keeps the chance of cross contamination. It's safer for myself and the other custodian. It's safer for anybody that's going to have to handle this evidence.
So when you mentioned vacuum seal, and I'm sure that people are thinking it as they're watching this, and so I want to ask the question. My very first thought was, what happens if there is fentanyl in a package? And ultimately, the vacuum sealing process is sucking air out and it's displacing that air somewhere else. Is there any concern of maybe moving fentanyl that would not have been moved by just a normal package?
And we've thought about that process as well. What we did is we have obviously a heroin problem here in Louisville. So we have put Narcan in each officer's patrol cars in case they encounter fentanyl on the street. So we also brought that into our station as well. There is Narcan in the evidence processing room, and we also wrote it into our policy that anytime a custodian is in that evidence room, they must have Narcan on their persons, gloves, masks, things of that nature. So wearing PPE gear, and if by chance fentanyl comes out of the double bag system while they're doing the vacuum seal, and they do begin to feel funny and things of that nature, and again, through training to let them know what the effects of that may feel like. That way they can go ahead and administer a dose of Narcan, get on their radio and say, start me a squad, a backup or whatnot to the evidence room. I believe I've just ingested fentanyl, or via transdermal or any other way that that drug can get into the system.
Yeah. Now, I have a couple of comments, and listen, I hope you guys don't mind. Listen, these are evidence techs out there that are commenting on all this stuff. And look, I believe in having discussions about these things, you know, because I certainly don't know. And so my job is I'm just trying to put a lot of people together to have discussions about things. But multiple people have responded about not sealing marijuana because it actually causes it to break down into some sort of a dangerous component. Do you have any thoughts? Do you know anything about packaging marijuana like that? I don't know.
I don't, in all honesty.
Okay. Well, that might, you know what, I'll dig into that and I'll, cause you know, Sean's available. I don't know that answer. I mean, so, you know, it'd be interesting to know if vacuum sealing in marijuana, cause actually multiple people have said that on here. So I got to believe there's something true about that, but I'll dig into that and certainly get you back some information on it and you can look at it. I think 3 people said something about that it should be in something breathable, but of course, when it's in breathable, you go right back to now you got the smell and the everything else and the ventilation. And so I don't know that answer, but yeah, I think actually 4 people said something about that. Anyways, so let's move on from that. Let me see what else you've got in here. What was this back here? There was something. What is that? I mean, I'm just guessing regular drugs, and it even has your label on it that it's possible fentanyl.
It is, and that's just, you know, again, you can kind of see underneath that label, you see that green line. That's just the Ziploc baggie that is inside of an evidence bag, and then either it came back from the lab or it didn't need to go to the lab, so we immediately put it inside a vacuum seal bag and then sealed the entire bag. The label is actually inside that sealed bag, so there's no chance of the label coming off, being displaced, and you can still scan right through the plastic.
Yeah. Just for everybody that's commenting on the marijuana, once I get whatever the answers are and we get some feedback, I'll make a post about that on the screen.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I mean, we're here to learn too. So
sure.
Maybe, you know, not saying that what we're doing is right. Maybe we need to change up some of the things that we're doing actually.
Well, the feedback I'm getting, like somebody has literally said it creates a toxic mold. So, I mean, it is, you know, again, I don't know what the deal is. We'll get a post on there. You know what? Maybe we'll have a webinar literally on dealing with marijuana and packaging it and how to go about handling that. So, good. All right. Well, listen, as I flip through these things, I feel like we've covered most of these things that are in here. Is there, yeah, that was my last picture on there. So, you know, certainly if anybody has any questions or comments, certainly post them. I've had as many comments here today as I have on anything. So I appreciate you guys sharing everything you've had because there's been a lot of information or questions that have been asked on here. I'll certainly get the policy posted. Any last thing you want to throw out to us? I don't know that I have anything else in particular that I need to throw out.
We appreciate you having us on, you know, and this is going to be a learning experience for us as well. We're not perfect. We're cops, you know, we're not full-time evidence custodians, you know, and with smaller agencies and smaller budgets, sometimes, you know, training is limited, but we're always looking for ways to improve. So if anybody has any suggestions, please absolutely send that over to us, whatever information you got. And we work well with others. You know, we're willing to share whatever information we have with anybody that's wanting that information.
Sure. Well, by the way, just to correct one thing you said right there, you're not perfect because you're cops. You're not perfect because you're human. So that's
true.
That's
true.
That's true. That's everybody watching, regardless of what position you are in this world. There is not perfection. And so, listen, it's a big deal to come on here and be willing to open yourself up and have people comment on things. And this has been immensely valuable. People are going to get a lot of stuff out of this. So I appreciate you willing to open it up. And I don't see any more questions coming in. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here today. Again, guys, thank you so much for your time. And for everybody else that's watching, we'll post this video out there. I've got some homework and some stuff we'll post. I'll get that posted here this afternoon. So with that, we're going to hang it up. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.